So I just want to thank everybody for attending. And there's a few community members hands away. So I would like to hear from Leilani first and then Aaron.
I wanted to thank Parents for Public Schools. This was beautifully held tonight. Um, I heard a lot of things that I've been waiting to hear from for a long time. Questions about the budget, questions about auditing, understanding that each district needs some of these multiple schools in different sizes for different reasons. Some children need a smaller school. Some children are fine with a mid-sized school, but schools are very important to the fabric of our kids. This is their legacy. The schools really belong to them. So closing schools was very distressing as a San Franciscan. I just love hearing. Also, there is what I'm hearing is like some space in between what you as the board would do and what SFUSD is doing. Mostly the auditing, mostly the asking the serious questions and then asking for the follow-up. I felt like for years that yes, there is somewhat of a partnership, but there's also strong accountability from the board to protect the parents and the students and the staff. That is the responsibility of the board. I loved hearing about how you see the budget, how you see facilities. You were talking about grants. This was very helpful to hear. I know there's so much more. To me, most important as a San Franciscan, as a grandmother, as somebody who attended SFUSD, it is very important to preserve schools, preserve public schools. Our children deserve it. That is our legacy to them. And I appreciate that you guys came tonight. And this was a really beautiful forum held. Thank you so much.
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. I've been having trouble with the Zoom tonight. I want to just say my name is Erin. I've been working with Parents for Public Schools of San Francisco for 3 years, and I very much appreciate each of the candidates being here tonight and the others in the audience. And I know it's a busy time right before the election. I appreciate you taking the time because there are so many either undecided voters or people who are still going to be voting on Tuesday. My question is that I have been, in my role with Parents for Public Schools, I've been attending almost every of the Board of Education meeting and some of the subcommittee meetings for the last 3 years. And I think my very first meeting, there were parents just crying into the microphone, please protect our kids. I don't remember what it was about, but I've seen that throughout the 3 years. I've seen tiny children get up and say, I love my school, don't close it. I don't want my teacher to be sad. And then other organizations like ours are coming in with facts and wanting to see real changes, real changes, and be shown evidence of why what the changes they're making are what they chose would be the best. But what I'm kind of wondering, I guess, is I know legally the board commissioners are not able to respond directly to questions or public comment, but how might you see a way to to follow up with the person making the public comment so that they feel heard and hopefully reassured, or to have their point taken into account, because it's a really big deal for anyone to get to these meetings due to what time it's at, get traffic, childcare, all of those things. So I just want to make sure that the people who are attending are feeling like they are being seen as a representative of the community. Thank you.
Oh my, thank you, Aaron. Min, would you want to answer that one? And then Virginia?
Sorry. Yes, and I haven't been attending as long as Erin that you have, only for the past little bit less than a year. But I concur with exactly what you witnessed and seen. I mean, you've got school children, parents, community leaders, and a lot of frustration, a lot of anger around many things. And I would say that originally, when I attended my first one, I was like, I was kind of flabbergasted, like, how come the commissioners aren't answering? But you're exactly right. From a legal standpoint, they can't. However, I have spoken to SFUSD and I said, well, why don't we at the end of each session, each board session, actually do a Q&A, right? Make sure that we write out, right, acknowledge what the question was, write out what the follow-up is, write out things that we can address and write out things we can't address, because it's equally important to let the public and let our customers, so to speak, understand things that we can address, when we can we address them, and how will we address them, and also answer things we cannot address, because we need that feedback loop, because otherwise, as parents, right, we don't know. It feels like we're talking into a black hole and we're giving our opinions and our perspectives and there's no response back. And that is never a good formula from a communication standpoint. So I think it's really important for the board to actually be able to, whether it's at, after each session, to do like a question and answer so you have to see it, or follow up. I know that many of the parents are very frustrated because they feel like it's not the first time they've said things. They've said it multiple times. And I've heard parents say, I've come here so many times and still no answer. Or they've actually written letters, emails, no response. That's actually not okay. We need to be able to respond back, even if we can't address it. We can say, we can't address it this year, we can address it next year, or we can't address it because of X, Y, and Z. It needs to be relayed. Otherwise, I think we have this kind of situation where there's a lot of anger and a lot of distrust of the board.
Well, I'll keep it short. I mean, we can the the board commissioners can definitely put together an FAQ. I don't know what the volume of feedback looks like, and I know that the comms team is already overwhelmed. So I think it's a matter of capacity and skills. However, I think this is a perfect example of how we can use technology and AI to scan questions, transcribe questions, and be able to scan and do an analysis of all of the comments and questions, and scan for similarities, and be able to address it with some tools. So that is definitely something that can be worked on in an efficient way.
Virginia and Mint really gave some great examples here. The system's set up more to protect the board than it is the parents. That makes no sense. We've got to get creative here and figure out a way to protect the parents and get their questions answered. Do we have to hire like a proxy who's not officially a board member but can speak on behalf of the board and talk to the parents? There has to be communication. You just can't have them walk away at the end of the day and not have their questions answered. That's just terrible. It's like Min was saying, you got to keep that dialogue open or we're doomed. Thank you.
Thank you. And so I'm gonna read out Christopher's question. This is actually a question directed to you, Leftera, specifically. The question is in the chat as well, if you'd like to read it. It says, why are you choosing to run for a spot on a public school board while you've had owned a school, your own school, a private school? If you'd like to answer that.
So that's a great question. I'm sorry, who asked it?
Christopher?
Christopher, thank you. Thank you for that question. So, so like how I explained at the beginning, when I had my own school, that kind of just opened my eyes to the importance of education. And unfortunately, during COVID, we had to close the schools. The hardest decision I ever had to make. Really broke my heart. It's not easy having to close a school. It's like the parents are saying, the kids are upset, the parents are upset, the entire community is affected. So we have to do everything we can to keep our schools and healthy and viable for our children, and that's why I'm doing this.
And then we have a question as well from Ephraim. This is a question directed to any candidate. One of the most underserved focal groups in the district are newcomer students. particularly Latino immigrants? How would you address the disparities in academic performance, social emotional well-being, and a sense of belonging so that they can thrive in our public schools? And anybody can answer that.
Hi, Efrain. Thank you for the question. We definitely have to work with our community organizations who have cultural competence in communities to build bridges and utilize trusted messengers in the community to support our parents support our parents in becoming advocates themselves. So this is a Head Start model as well, and Head Start is the gold standard of education and family engagement. And so if we can carry on some of those best practices from Head Start into SFUSD, I think all of our kiddos can benefit and do a lot better. And we don't focus enough on social emotional supports and curriculum, which is a big focus in first 5 years. So definitely having language competence, language access, partnering with parents, engaging with parents, incorporating social emotional development, bringing together nonprofits to engage to support with other needs for the families, and having a strong partnership with the parents and extended community members.
Yeah, so I mentioned earlier that I was a product of public schools, and we actually came to the US in 1972, and I actually grew up in Africa, so my first language is actually French. So when we came here to the States and I started second grade, I didn't speak a single word of English. But my second grade teacher actually spoke a little bit of French, and actually made me feel right at home. That made me feel really, really accepted and welcomed, and I very quickly learned English. And so I wanted to kind of share that. The other piece so kind of move up to like today in my company, I mentioned this program that we have where we teach what we call vessels, so vocational English as a second language. And actually our cohorts, the very few first cohorts that we had were all Hispanic, from Hispanic background. And what we've learned through that experience is that it's important to bring people in. It's also important from a language immersion perspective to actually be able to teach English and have them learn English. However, it's also very important to maintain cultural identity and cultural aspect as well. And so I would say both of those are super important. And it's with English, especially, it's not a one and done. So even though they get the upfront English training, we have to make sure that there's continuous education, continuous learning as well. So I would apply kind of similar thinking to this as well, which is making sure that our kids learn language a lot faster than adults do. And I do think that coming in, making sure that they feel welcome, they feel at home, they feel part of the classroom, part of the rest of the student population, but also recognize that they also, each of us, right, bring our own cultural loveliness, or cultural diversity, and not to forget that, not to miss that, and to celebrate that as well.